What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. Today, I'm doing my updated 2022 NASCAR Cup Series driver lineup predictions. Let's go and just jump straight to it. We're going to start off with the 00 car for Starcom Racing. I believe that the driver of this car, once again in 2022, is going to be Quin Houff. Now, Quin Houff is currently a free agent at the end of the series, signed a 2-year deal for 2020 and 2021, and he's at points struggled this year with Starcom Racing. But I do think that Starcom Racing is going to continue to work with him going into 2022. And I think once again next year he will drive for Starcom Racing. I maybe thought maybe Brendan Poole could be in the opportunity, maybe go back to Starcom. There's some talk maybe that Brendan Poole could go there. But I believe that Quin Houff, once again in 2022, will be driving the number 00 car for Starcom Racing. Up next, we're going to talk about the first of two Trackhouse cars, the 1 car for Trackhouse Racing, and this car will be driven by Roush next year. It was announced about a week or two ago that Roush will be officially driving the number 1 car for Trackhouse Racing. He had been linked to Trackhouse Racing for a long time due to Chip Ganassi Racing Association. Remember, Chip Ganassi Racing was bought up about a month or two ago from Trackhouse Racing. They bought the whole operations and parts, and they basically have taken a lot of that going into 2022, and they have acquired one of the two current Chip Ganassi Racing drivers, and Roush will drive the 1 car right there. Ross is really not bringing any funding, but I do expect that some of the sponsorship that came from Chip Ganassi Racing to also go over there, but we know for sure that Roush will drive the 1 car full-time for Trackhouse Racing in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 2 car for Team Penske, and this one is going to be driven by Austin Cindric going in this year. This move makes a lot of sense, in my opinion. Austin Cindric, of course, being the son of Tim Cindric, who is the president of Team Penske and also runs the competition director side of things, well, if I remember correctly. He's basically runs like a lot of the operations, as Roger's really not running the operations right now. Tim Cindric is currently running the operations. Plus, Austin Cindric won the 2020 NASCAR Xfinity Series Championship, and he has a very strong chance of winning not only the regular season championship, the series, an 80-point lead over aging Allmendinger, but he also right now is likely potentially in the favorite candidate to win the 2021 and go back-to-back here. I think Austin Cindric has a good shot of running well next year, but he will drive the 2 car full-time in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 3 car for Rich Childress Racing. While this ride has not been confirmed at this time, I believe that Austin Dillon is going to return to the 3 car once again in 2022. And the reason I say Austin Dillon going back there is because he is the grandson of Richard Childress. And he's been with RCR's plant since 2011. Of course, like I said, he's the grandson of Rich Childress. So I do expect 100% that we're going to see Austin Dillon back there next year. Maybe he'll improve, I'm not exactly sure, but he will drive the first of 2 RCR cars in number 3 in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 4 car for SHR, the first of the 4 Stewart-Haas racing cars. This car should be no surprise. This one will be driven by Kevin Harvick. Kevin Harvick's been in the SHR plant since 2014. Not only that, he has a contract to go through 2023. There have been potential interest. He may leave SHR and go over and own JT Doherty Racing, take ownership over there, since both drivers currently drive for JT Doherty Racing are currently associated with the KHI Management Group. That being said, though, we believe 100% that Kevin Harvick will be back at SHR next year in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 5 car for Hendrick Motorsports. This one has already been confirmed. Kyle Larson will drive the 5 car full-time for Hendrick Motorsports through the 2023 season. It had been originally believed that Kyle Larson did have a contract through the 2022 season, but had been announced a couple weeks ago that Kyle Larson has signed another year extension, and he'll be with this team through 2023, with Hendrick Cars backing be along with him for the foreseeable future. And this is a really good move considering Kyle Larson has been really, really strong throughout this year, has shown a lot of speed through the 2022 season, 21 season, so far, and I think he has a very good shot to win a championship with Hendrick Motorsports going forward. And I think Kyle Larson will do a lot of great things going into next year, but he'll be back in the 5 car full-time for Hendrick Motorsports next year. Up next, we're going to talk about the 6 car for Roush Racing, and this one will be driven by Brad Keselowski. It had finally been confirmed during basically the 2nd or 3rd day of the 2-week break that Brad Keselowski was officially going to become the co-owner / driver of Roush Fenway Racing. Now, Brad Keselowski will have partial ownership of the team. Brad Keselowski has been wanting to get into ownership game for a very, very long time, and I think the perfect time, especially with the next-gen car, I think this move makes a lot of sense. Now, I think that this move also will work very well for this team, as I do think long-term this team will become very competitive. I don't expect Brad Keselowski to immediately be a championship contender right away with the Roush Fenway plant, but I do think that long-term, we're going to see Brad Keselowski run extremely well and extremely fast, and as time goes on, I think that he'll do a lot of great things for this organization overall, and he'll drive the 6 car full-time for Roush Racing. Up next, we're going to talk about the 7 car for Spire Motorsports, and this one has already been confirmed as well. Corey LaJoie will drive the 7 car for Spire Motorsports next year. They've basically taken back the number 99 charter. They had leased out the 7 charter out to 99, and they're taking that back next year. Corey LaJoie has a 2-year contract. The team is believing his contract ends at the end of the 2022 season. Spire Motorsports has had their ups and downs here. They've had some decent speeds, some top 15s and top 20s in the 2021 season, but at points as well, they have struggled. That being said, though, with the next-gen car coming around, I think they'll just have a little bit more of an opportunity to run really well in these events, and hopefully it will help Corey LaJoie in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 8-car for Roush Racing. This one, while it's not confirmed this time, this move I think will happen. I think Tyler Reddick will be back driving for RCR in the 2022 season. Tyler Reddick has been part of the RCR brand since 2019 when he started driving for them in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Has of them in the Cup Series. While he's not won a career Cup Series race yet, he has been very, very consistent. He's had a really good year so far. He has a string of finishes together where he's not finished worse than 20th since all the way back at Bristol Dirt. He has a big stretch going on for about the last 15 or 16 races. He's been really, really fast. And Tyler Reddick, I think, once again, will be back in the 8-car full-time in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 9-car for Hendrick Motorsports. This should be no surprise. Chase Elliott will be back in the number 9 car. Now, Chase Elliott currently does have a contract that does go through the 2022 season. But we've been hearing that they're working on a long-term contract for Chase Elliott. From what I've heard, there is a lifelong contract they're working on for Chase Elliott currently at the moment, a massive contract. They just need to get the sponsorship and the rights to be with Chase Elliott. But once all that comes through, we're going to hear a massive, massive deal for Chase Elliott. And I think that this will continue to help Chase Elliott, especially going next year. This will be really good for Chase Elliott. Up next, we're going to talk about the 10-car for Stewart-Haas Racing. While this ride has not been confirmed 100% from Stewart-Haas Racing's camp, Eric Almirola recently spoke to the media about what his plans are for next year, and he says that he has a multi-year deal with Stewart-Haas. So Eric Almirola will probably be back in this 10-car full-time next year. Now, Eric Almirola, really up until the last couple weeks, he's been really having a really bad year, but I do think the big reason why he's staying with the team, number one, he brings sponsorship and the funding overall, and number two, Eric Almirola won SHR's first race of the year at New Hampshire, really convincing fashion. He had arguably the fastest car in that event, so I do think that going into next year, Eric Almirola would be a much better driver. And I think next year, especially next gen car, I think SHR will be a little bit better as well. But if we will see Eric Almirola expected, be back in a 10-car full-time next year. Up next, we're going to talk about the 11-car for Joe Gibbs Racing. This one should surprise nobody. Denny Hamlin will be back in the car once again. Denny Hamlin has a multi-year contract extension. It's believed maybe a 3 or 4 year deal for Denny Hamlin. We don't exactly know the extent of the contract for Denny Hamlin, but right before the season began, he announced a multi-year extension. He originally had been a free agent going into this year, but now he has a pretty long-term deal with Joe Gibbs Racing. This should surprise nobody. Now, Denny Hamlin currently does not have a win this year, but if you look how good Denny Hamlin's been, he's been fighting for the regular season championship throughout this year. Again, they've been also really close to winning races throughout the year. They probably should have a win right now. Some drivers that have already won this year probably should not have wins this year that Denny Hamlin should have this year. But I do think long-term Denny Hamlin will continue to be a great driver for our sport and a ambassador for our sport as well. And we'll see him in the 11-car once again in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 12-car for Team Penske. This one is already confirmed as well. This will be driven by Ryan Blaney. Ryan Blaney, it is believed he has a 3-year extension going on. This will be the second of 3 year seasons with the team. It is believed that his contract goes through the 2023 season. You look at Ryan Blaney. He's been very consistent at points here. He's been in the top 10 of points a majority of the year so far. He started off the year really kind of struggling, but as the year has gone on, he has gotten better. Again, I'd like to see Ryan Blaney win a couple more races in a single season. He's only won 1 race in every single season. I'd like to see him win more than 1 victory, though. That being said, Ryan Blaney has a lot to give. He's got a great personality overall, and we're expecting him to be back in the 12-car, and we're 100% confirmed that he'll be back in the 12-car full-time in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 13-car for NBM Motorsports. This will be the first of 2 cars. However, I think that this is going to be a one-off attempt for the 2022 Daytona 500. I think NBM Motorsports is going to have 2 cars in the 2022 season. And the driver that they're going to choose is the driver that they chose last year to attempt to qualify for Daytona 500, Garrett Smithley. Garrett Smithley has driven for this team a couple times in the past, especially in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, and almost qualified their way in to Daytona 500 this year. I think, like I said, this is the only race that they are going to attempt this year. I think this is going to be the last time that we're going to see NBM run 2 cars for a very long time. But I do believe that we will see his 13 car and see the first of 2 NBM cars. We'll see Garrett Smithley in that 13 car. Up next, we're going to talk about the 14 car for Stewart-Haas Racing. While this ride has not been confirmed at this time, it is believed that Chase Briscoe is expected to come back to this team for 2022. And this makes a lot of sense. Chase Briscoe's been really, really good on road courses here. He has 3 top 10s this year. He's not been as good as we all thought he was going to be. He's really good on road courses. Other than that, he's kind of had an underwhelming year here in the 2022 season. However you look at Chase Briscoe, he's got, I think, has a lot of long-term potential with this organization. I do think SHR not being as good as here has affected him overall as well in his performance on and off the racetrack. So to me, in my opinion, I think Chase Briscoe will next year be better with Roush Racing, and he'll be very, very good. Up next, we're going to talk about the 15 car for Rick Ware Racing. Now, there is some interesting notes that have come out in regards to Rick Ware Racing. Rick Ware Racing is going to downsize next year, planning downsize maybe in a 1 or 2 car operation. They're expected to get rid of 1 or 2 of their cars going into 2022. Now, I think that there is going to be an interesting thing that's going to happen with Rick Ware Racing. The first car, I think, is going to be full-time. And I think that this car is going to be driven by James Davison with a much more competitive Rick Ware Racing organization. I think that James Davison will be a lot more competitive next year. I think he'll run more consistently in the top 25, maybe even the top 20 at points there. Be like similar to what Spire Motorsports has done this year. I think Rick Ware is going to upgrade a little bit next year, and I think James Davison will be the driver that goes full-time with the team. And I think that this will be a good move overall for the Rick Ware Racing organization. Up next, we're going to talk about the number 16 car for Kaulig Racing. Though the number is not 100% confirmed for this driver, it is believed that Justin Haley is going to drive the 16 car. Now, Justin Haley has been driving for Kaulig Racing in the NASCAR Xfinity Series and the Cup Series since 2019. He's actually, as a matter of fact, the first driver to ever race with his organization in the Cup Series when they attempted to qualify for Daytona 500 in 2020, and they were able to go out and win that event. Not win that event, but they were able to qualify and actually ran really, really well in that event as well. Not only that, Justin Haley is a very, very good super speedway racer and a very decent racer overall. So it made a lot of sense to choose Justin Haley as your full-time driver. Considering, like I said, he's been in the organization for quite some time. We're expecting to see Justin Haley. We all got this confirmed. They'll be driving a 16-car full-time for Kaulig Racing. Up next, we're going to talk about the 17 car for Roush Racing. While this has not been 100% confirmed, it is believed that Chris Buescher will be driving the 17 car once again in 2022, and it makes a lot of sense. Chris Buescher has been with the Roush organization since 2020 when he went back to the organization. Originally, he was a driver for this team in the Xfinity Series, a development driver for the team, before going over to Front Row Motorsports for a year and then jumping over to JT Doherty. But they made a swap between him and Ricky Stenhouse Jr., and now Chris Buescher has been on the team. And he's been decently competitive this year, been in the playoffs the majority of the year, really up until the last couple weeks. He's kind of fallen off as they've gotten longer into the season. He's unfortunately kind of fallen off almost outside the top 20 points, which is really unfortunate because at the beginning of this year he was really, really good, but this team has kind of fallen off. But we are believing, especially with fast long extending through 2024, we are expecting that we're going to see Chris Buescher back in the 17 car full-time in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 18 car for Joe Gibbs Racing. This one is no surprise. Kyle Busch will be back in this car. It is believed that Kyle Busch has a contract that only goes, however, through the 2022 season, but I do think that they are going to extend Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch has been arguably Joe Gibbs Racing's best ever driver. Look at his statistics, winning 2 NASCAR Cup Series championships. Could have more on it, to be honest with you. He's been very, very good. Has a chance maybe win a championship this year, get his 3rd championship, and 2nd in the last 3 years. We'll have to keep an eye on that for sure, but we'll see Kyle Busch back in the 18 car full-time in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the number 19 car for Joe Gibbs Racing. This one's also been confirmed. Mark Truex Jr. will drive the number 19 car for the team. It was announced back in February, about a week or 2 ago, before the season even began. It was announced that Mark Truex Jr. will be driving. Now, it's really unknown how long the deal was. They did say a multi-year deal. However, it is also potentially rumored to believe that it was only a 1-year extension through the 2020 season. He could technically be a free agent at the end of this year. They really never disclosed that in regards to Mark Truex Jr., but Mark Truex Jr. has been pretty good this year, and we will see him back in the number 19 car full-time in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 20 car for Joe Gibbs Racing, the final Joe Gibbs Racing car. While this is not 100% confirmed at this point, it is 100% believed that Christopher will be back in the 20, and the reason is he has a 3-year deal with Toyota. Originally, he's supposed to run 2 years with the Fine Family Racing and then jump over to Joe Gibbs Racing in 2022. Well, when the Fine Family Racing shut down due to the pandemic, things changed, and they put Christopher Bell in the 20 car this season. And Christopher Bell has had an off and on year this year. He's had some good finishes here and some bad finishes this year. But I do think going in next year, as the longer he's in the series, I think the better he's going to get overall. He has a win so far this year at Daytona Road Course, so we'll see what happens going into 2022. But we will see Christopher Bell in the number 20 car in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 21 car for Wood Brothers. This one has been confirmed. Harrison Burton will drive the number 21 car for Wood Brothers. I think this is a very decent move overall. He'll be replacing Matt DiBenedetto next year. Again, Matt DiBenedetto, in my honest opinion, I think was a decent driver. He actually had the best average finish last year for Wood Brothers in a single season. But I do think that bringing Harrison Burton over, the biggest reason is, one, he was in a KHI management group, which Kevin Harvick drives for Fords. The second thing is that Dex Imaging is also into Penske branding as well. And with Dex Imaging being sponsored Ryan Blaney for a long time, it made a lot of sense to bring Harrison Burton into the Penske Corporation. Now, I do think long-term he will not drive for Wood Brothers in the long-term of things. I think that he'll go over to a team like SHR long-term, but we will see next year Harrison Burton drive the 21 car for the Wood Brothers. Up next, we're going to talk about the number 22 car for Team Penske. This one should surprise nobody. Joey Logano is going to drive that number 22 car. Joey Logano has a contract that goes through the 2023 season. I do think that his contract eventually, though, is going to get long-term extended. He's been Penske. He's going to become Penske's flasher driver once Brad Keselowski does go over to 6 car next year. Joey Logano has been very, very awesome to watch. I mean, Mark claimed he was basically the sliced bread of NASCAR. He's a guy that has done a lot of great things for our sport so far. He's not very popular, and he's very controversial, but we will see Joey Logano back in the 22 car. I think he'll do a lot of great things going in next year. Up next, we're going to talk about the number 23 car for 2311 Racing. This surprised nobody. Bubba Wallace will be back in the 23 car. Bubba Wallace, basically, they built the team around Bubba Wallace. Michael Jordan, Denny Hamlin built the team around Bubba Wallace. And this year, they've had their ups and downs. Now, I do think over the last couple weeks, except on the road courses, I do think 2311 Racing has overall been performing how they have been performing on the racetrack. They've shown a lot of speed over time at certain points, at certain tracks. They should definitely have a lot more top 5s and more top 10s than they currently have this year. They've only had one top 5 and one top 10 to show for it this year. But I do think going into next year, I do think that they are going to improve as an organization, especially with the help that they're going to get next year. I think that they are going to improve overall, in my honest opinion. Up next, we're going to talk about the number 24 car for Hendrick Motorsports. This one's already been confirmed. William Byron will be driving a 24 car next year. His contract does go through the 2021 season. However, we know that his contract is probably going to get extended as well. Look at William Byron this year throughout the 2021 season. He's been very, very consistent. Yes, he only has one win at Homestead, but like I said, he's been extremely consistent this year. He probably should have a couple more wins than he has had this year, but William Byron's been extremely consistent with how young and how good of a driver he really, really is. I do think William Byron will continue to be a great driver for Hendrick long-term and keep Hendrick Motorsports afloat as we continue on. Up next, we're going to talk about the number 26 car for GMS Racing. While the number has not been confirmed for the team, I do believe that GMS is going to choose the number 26 for the organization. Now, who do I think the driver is going to be? I think that GMS Racing is going to select Matt DiBenedetto. And the reason I think that they're going to choose Matt DiBenedetto is, one, I think GMS is going to acquire one of the charters from Rico Racing. As like I said, Rico Racing is going to downsize next year going into 2022 to focus more on trying to make their cars a little bit more competitive. They're expected to downsize next year. And I think that they are going to choose Matt DiBenedetto. I do think that they're going to get Chevy support as well. And I think they're going to be decently competitive off of their first year. Matt DiBenedetto, like I said, yes, he does not bring a lot of funding, but I really do believe that Matt DiBenedetto is going to be the driver they choose overall for the 2022 season. I think that's who their driver they're going to choose for 2022. I think that GMS goes full-time. I think they're able to acquire a charter, and I think that we'll see Matty D drive the 26 car next year. Up next, we're going to talk about the 29 car for Roush Fenway Racing. Roush Fenway Racing has said that they have a potential that they may run a third car part-time. But there's only one driver they said they would do that for, and that driver is Ryan Newman. I 100% believe that Ryan Newman is not going to be able to really find a full-time rider. Because remember, he's not going to be racing full-time for the team next year in 2022 as Brad Keselowski is going to be taking over that ride. Now, Steve Newmark, who is the president currently at Roush Fenway Racing, he mentioned that they do potentially, if Ryan Newman cannot find a full-time ride anywhere else, another organization like Kaulig or GMS Racing, that they would go ahead and maybe give him an opportunity to go part-time. And Ryan Newman did say that if that opportunity comes, he probably would definitely take that. So I think Ryan Newman is going to go part-time with team. Now, how many races do I think Ryan Newman will attempt? I definitely think the Daytona 500. I definitely do think Bristol. There are probably all the crown jewel races and probably quite a few races they're going to run. Like I said, I don't expect Ryan Newman and this team to go full-time next year, but I do think that going into 2022, we are going to see Ryan Newman run part-time and finish out his career like Terry Labonte and some other drivers like Bill Elliott ran part-time. I think that we are going to see him drive the number 29 for Roush Fenway. Up next, we're going to talk about the number 32 car for 2311 Racing. 2311 Racing is expected to expand. We have not had an official announcement. However, the deal is very, very close to being done at the moment. And currently, the most linked driver is Ben Kurt Busch. It's been on board for a very, very long time. We've talked about this quite a bit on the channel. That Kurt Busch is the most likely to go to 2311 Racing second car. As like I said, they are going to expand going into 2022. Kurt Busch being a guy who's won a championship in NASCAR back in 2004. Also has won with pretty much every team he's raced, regardless of the equipment. He's won pretty much every team where competed wins. I mean, he almost won races with Phoenix Racing at Sonoma, which that team was like a team that really never competed inside the top 20 or top 30, except basically, you know, on the super speedways and a few select road course races. They really were never really that competitive, but they were somewhat competitive with Kurt Busch. Kurt Busch is definitely the perfect choice. I also think that Kurt Busch should be a really, really good mentor figure for him, and he's also going to bring funding as well to this team, so I think funding will matter, and I think that they are also going to get the other charter from Rico Racing that is going to become available going into 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the number 33 car. Now, recently, in the last couple days, we have been hearing reports about a new truck series organization that is planning to at least go part-time next year. From what I've heard and from what I have been told and from what I've been hearing, the most linked team currently at the moment has been the Rayun Brothers organization. The Rayun Brothers organization currently fields a full-time NASCAR truck series team. They run multiple trucks. They've had drivers like Jake Griffith, Lawless Allen, even Josh Ream have driven. They, I think, are going to be the team that jumps up to Cup, and it's because it's going to be a lot cheaper to run a Cup Series car eventually than it is going to run. And I think that they're only going to run a few select races. I think they're also going to get some backing from Toyota and probably get some backing and work with teams like NBM Motorsports and maybe work with Joe Gibbs Racing, so maybe become the Gaunt Brothers of the Cup Series. Again, be another team similar to Burkott and increase the Toyota sales. We've been hearing that Toyota may want to expand, and I think that the Rayun Brothers organization is going to be the team. The drivers that I think there are going to be in the running for that are going to be Josh Ream and Jake Griffin. Josh will run a majority races, and I think that Jake Griffith will run the dirt race at Bristol as well, in my opinion. Up next, we're going to talk about the 34 car for Front Row Motorsports. This really is not going to surprise anybody, while this has also not been confirmed at this time. I believe Michael McDowell is coming back to the 34 next year. Michael McDowell said in the past that he wants to continue racing for Front Row Motorsports. He's been a very, very solid driver for his team the last couple of years, especially including this year, where he's able to win Daytona 500. But not only that, he's been in the top 20 points a majority of the years this year so far. He's had 4 or 5 top 10s this year, the more top 10s than he's ever had in a single season, including last year. He had a pretty solid year overall. Michael McDowell thinks a very, very good driver, especially his later stages of his career. He will continue driving for Front Row Motorsports, and he will probably end up driving the 34 car once again in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the second of the 3 Front Row Motorsports cars. We're going to talk about the 36 car for Front Row. Now, I do think that this car is going to only be a part-time car, and I think it's only going to tap Daytona 500. And I think they're going to go back to an old reliable. I think they are going to choose David Reagan to run Daytona 500 once again. David Reagan has attempted to qualify for Daytona 500 multiple times. He actually was able to qualify in this year's Daytona 500, and he actually had a pretty decent run in this year's Daytona 500. So I don't remember exactly if he got caught up in a wreck early in the race. I'm not exactly sure. But David Reagan made the Daytona 500 this year. I think they're going to choose a guy that's won multiple Super Speedway races. Both of his wins kind of come on Super Speedway tracks. As a matter of fact, 2011 Daytona for him in the July Daytona race, in 2013 at Talladega. I think that they're going to go back to an old reliable, and I think that David Reagan will make a one-off start in Daytona 500 again in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 38 car for, we're going to talk about 38 car for Front Row Motorsports. And that will once again be driven, no surprise to me. I think that this car will be driven by Anthony Alfredo. Now, Anthony Alfredo has not had a really good rookie year so far in 2021. However, Front Row has said, like I mentioned, that they are planning to be status quo next. They are basically status quo currently at the moment. And they basically are, it's a year-by-year basis for the drivers. And apparently what they also told Toby Christie, they mentioned that currently they really have liked what he's been doing this year out on the racetrack. So to me, I think that Anthony Alfredo will come back to the scene full time. This also, you have to remember, this is also Anthony Alfredo's first full-time year as a NASCAR Cup Series driver. Not only that, this is also his first full year because in all the previous years that he's ran in Xfinity trucks, he's never ran a full season because, again, he wasn't really eligible to run a full season in those select years. And also, he is the youngest full-time NASCAR Cup Series driver at the age of 21 or 22 years of age. So Anthony Alfredo, being as young as he is, it's a little bit of an experience for him, but we will probably see him once again back in the 38 car full-time in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the 41 car for Stewart-Haas Racing. While this has not been 100% confirmed, this will not change. Cole Custer, I think, will be back in the 41 car next year in 2022. The reason is Cole Custer's father, Joe Custer, is the president of SHR. Cole Custer has been the SHR player since even back at the beginning of 2014 when they were driving for Chevys. He's been with this team, and I'll be honest, the first years for Cole Custer, except this one in Kentucky, have not been really impressive. He's only had maybe 1 or 2 top 10s really throughout his entire, except he's had a couple top 10s. He really hasn't been that competitive in the couple years. I've been really disappointed what Cole Custer has done, but he's not leaving anytime soon because of the fact that he is the son. I'll give him a little bit more time to improve it, but I will admit I have been a little bit disappointed in what Cole Custer has done this year. But hopefully, as time goes on and he gets more time in the Cup Series, he will become a much better driver. Up next, we're going to talk about the 43 car for Richard Petty Motorsports. Now, we reported on the channel that we've talked about Richard Petty Motorsports maybe switching manufacturers. That looks like that is off the table, and they are not planning to switch manufacturers going into 2022. They, I think, are going to end up keeping Eric Jones with him in the brand. Eric Jones wants to return to Richard Petty Motorsports this year. Again, Richard Petty Motorsports has definitely not been as good as this year as they were last year due to the fact that I do think that them losing a lot of sponsorship and funding going into this year really has affected them. They've been on a week-by-week basis in a lot of their branding and sponsorship, and I do think that it has affected the team overall when it comes to their performance on the racetrack. But I think Eric Jones is a very good driver, and I think that they are going to continue keeping Eric Jones in the organization next year. Up next, we're going to talk about the number 47 car for JTG Daugherty Racing. There are going to be no changes here going into next year except on one thing. I've been told that there is a very strong possibility that we're going to see JT Daugherty Racing make an announcement late at the end of this year, and we are going to see Ricky Stenhouse Jr. keep the ride, but I think that they are going to be the team that switches over to Toyota. And the reason I think that this move overall is going to happen is because of the fact that they have had a Toyota connection in the past. Look at the history of JT Daugherty Racing. The first year, of course, they kind of had Fords, but in 2009 to 2013, they had Toyotas with Marcus Ambrose driving for the first years, and in 2011 to 2013 to the end of the year, they had Bobby Labonte before they decided to switch to Chevy in 2014. Another big reason is because a lot of the Joe Gibbs Racing pit crew members currently work over at JT Daugherty Racing. So I think that's the other reason why that we're going to see that happen. We are going to see Ricky Stenhouse Jr. return to 47, but we will see them switch to Toyota next year. Up next, we're going to talk about the 48 car for Hendrick Motorsports. This one should be no surprise. Alex Tillman signed a multi-year contract extension with this team through the 2023 season. Look at Alex Tillman's performance this year. Alex Tillman so far in 2021 has won 3 races. He's won his first multi-win year. He's been very solid throughout this year as far as around the top 10 in points. Again, he lost 25 points going in this weekend after that situation where they basically swapped the engines. But he's been very solid throughout this year, has shown a lot of speed, and is very capitalized on some situations. He'll be back in the scene through 2023, and he has a chance maybe to win a championship even this year if they get started performing a little bit better on the track. Up next, we're going to talk about the second of the 2 Rick Ware racing cars. This will be the number 51 car. Now, I think that this car is going to be the rotation car that they are going to choose going into next year. I think that mainly Cody Ware is going to run a lot of the season. Yes, I do think that Cody Ware will probably, however, run a lot of the IndyCar season. He'll run a lot of the season. I also do think a driver that will run a lot of the season as well as Josh Bilicki, who currently runs full-time with the team. Josh Bilicki, I think he's a very solid driver. And if I had to choose anybody to run full-time, I think it'd be Josh Bilicki. But I do think that they're going to have a rotation of drivers. J.J. Yealy, Josh Bilicki, and Cody Ware, I think are going to be that rotation going into 2022 as they try to become more competitive next year. Up next, we're going to talk about the number 66 car for NBM Motorsports, the second of the NBM Motorsports cars. Unlike the 13 car we talked about a little bit ago, this one is going to be a team that runs a lot more. I think, especially since they're working on trying to get the next-gen car, I think that they are going to run a lot of races next year. I think at least 10 to 12 races going next year, maybe even more as well. It just depends on how much sponsorship is going to come in. I think the driver of this car, once again, will be Timmy Hill. Timmy Hill's been the old reliable. He's driven for this team since he really got back into the Cup Series in the last couple years. And I think that we'll see Timmy Hill once again back into 6-6 as they try to find a way to maybe get a charter eventually, even though they've had trouble getting a charter. Maybe give you a team that surprises and gets it running to buy one of those charters. I'm not exactly sure. But we will see Timmy Hill drive the 6-6 car once again, in my opinion, in 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the second of the two Kaulig racing cars. I think the number is going to be the 77. I think that we will for 100% see AJ Allmendinger. He'll be running full-time in the Xfinity Series next year, but I do think AJ is, we already know that AJ is going to at least run all the road courses next year. Maybe some of the other ones they can't run, we'll have another driver run. I, however, do think that there are going to be a couple other drivers that are going to run with the same. The first one is Kaz Grala. I think Kaz Grala is also going to run full-time in the NASCAR Xfinity Series next year, but I do think that Kaz Grala will run some select Cup Series starts for Kaulig Racing as well. I think those two are 100% going to be there. The third one, I think that this is actually very, very possible. I think Jimmie Johnson is actually going to drive one-off race for Kaulig Racing. Jimmie Johnson has talked about maybe wanting to do a one-off return. And Kaulig Racing and Hendrick have a little bit of association, as they do have the Hendrick ECR enters in. I think that if they were going to go over, it would be a Chevy organization. As Honda and Toyota do have a rivalry, so he would probably end up running a Chevy. I also think that there probably could be the Daytona 500 that they do overall choose. I think Jimmie Johnson definitely could be in the running and will do one-off. The last driver, though, I think is Josh Berry. I've talked about how Josh Berry deserves more opportunities in Cup, and I do think that they will use him in a couple more Cup races. I think that'll be the lineup for Kaulig Racing going into 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the number 78 car for Live Fast Motorsports. I don't think anything changes here. I think BJ McLeod is going to run a majority of the year. I didn't think that we'll see a dirt ringer run event, maybe like a Kyle Strickler run a one-off that year. And I think that we'll see the road course ringers run like a Kyle Tilley and maybe even a Ryan Eversley run a couple races there. But BJ McLeod will take a majority of the ride going into 2022. Up next, we're going to talk about the number 96 car for Gaunt Brothers Racing. I think Gaunt Brothers Racing is going to run a lot more of the season in 2022. I think that they're going to have a rotation of drivers in their organization in 2022. I think Brandon Jones is going to take a lot of the work, especially with him having the funding and with people talking about maybe he could go up the Cup here in the future. He definitely could be the first choice. The other two, the first one, Ty Dillon. Ty Dillon has already driven for them this year. I think it's a year-by-year basis on what he's going to be doing right now, and it's a race-by-race basis on what he's going to do, especially them being uncharted. They're probably not going to run the event. I think they'll run a little more since practice qualifying is going to be back as well. The final driver I think that will be in the running to drive that is going to be Daniel Hemrick. Daniel Hemrick, in my opinion, had really thought he deserves a little more opportunity in Cup. He also does bring that Podby Bank sponsorship, so I think it'll be a rotation of drivers between Brandon Jones, Ty Dillon, and Daniel Hemrick, and I think that they'll run more races going next year, especially if practice qualifying coming back this year. And finally, we've reached the end of the episode. We're talking about the number 99 for Trackhouse Racing. This should be no surprise. Daniel Suarez will drive the second car for Trackhouse Racing. Daniel Suarez this year has impressed me on a statistical side of things. He's definitely got a resurgence in his NASCAR Cup Series career. Look at last year he drove for Gaunt Brothers Racing and other teams. He absolutely struggled, but they have put a lot of their eggs into Daniel Suarez and definitely has shown a lot of speed. I mean, look at Bristol Dirt earlier this year. Daniel Suarez showed a lot of speed in that event and was really, really fast and had a really good opportunity to go out there and contend. So to me, I think that Daniel Suarez will improve next year. Again, they are buying up the Chip Ganassi Racing stable, so they could potentially be the second Chevy team behind another organization. I'm not exactly sure, but we will see Daniel Suarez full-time back in the number 99 car in 2022. So, anyway, those are my official updated 2022 driver lineup predictions. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel to get notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Support page on links description below for that, and comment your predictions for the 2022 Cup Series driver lineup. Do you think that any of these are wrong, or do you think that my predictions are somewhat accurate? Let me know in the comments below. Anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video, and I'll see you guys next time for some more great and awesome NASCAR content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.